I made a trip to the cinema.
Oh yeah.
Not to go see. I don't know what popular films are at the moment.
What popular films are out at the moment? What is out at the moment?
I've no
Nothing.
idea.
This is the UK dumping ground.
Yeah. Fortunately, and in amongst the crap that's released, I did go see an absolute masterpiece. Probably the best film I've seen all year.
Oh, Chappie is the big film now.
Oh, Chappie.
Yeah.
Chappie.
Neil Blomkamp's hit. Yes.
No, I went to go see the new film from Studio Ghibli. The penultimate Studio Ghibli film. There's one more to get released over here.
Yep.
Because Studio Ghibli have now shut their doors.
Oh.
The first film by their famed director Isao Takahata in 14 years. He's not a household name. He's not as big as Miyazaki.
What are you talking about? Everyone knows
everyone knows Isao Takahata.
Yeah.
But people do know the film he's directed. He directed Grave of the Fireflies.
Oh, the most depressing film of all time.
Yes, quite possibly one of the most depressing films ever made. Possibly one of the best war films ever made. Possibly one of the best films ever made. It's up to you to decide. So he's returned after a 14-year absence with the Tale of a Princess Kaguya.
Yeah.
Which has been getting a huge amount of praise in the West, even though it absolutely bombed in Japan. And is actually attributed with the reason why Studio Ghibli have had to go on hiatus.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it'll make all its money in the West.
Hopefully. I hope so. I hope it encourages Studio Ghibli to keep its doors open, because it occurred to me as I was getting towards the end of the film that, oh fuck, they're not making films anymore.
Yeah.
Shit. But I thought the Tale of a Princess Kaguya was absolutely phenomenal.
What's the fucking plot? I don't know what's happening.
I don't know what's happening. Well, if you don't know anything about Japan, I imagine it's completely culturally different to anything that you're going to see like in like Shaun the Sheep.
Oh yeah.
Basically, it's based on a traditional Japanese folk story, like a folk legend, a folk tale, about a bamboo cutter who cuts open a bamboo stalk and he finds like a small princess inside.
Okay.
And the princess is like small, can fit in his hand, and she's like fully formed, and you know she's like a little mini doll, and she looks beautiful and amazing. And basically, the woodcutter takes it as a sign that I've got to raise this child right. I've got to raise this child to the standard of the little being that was in my hand, and the little being turns into a baby girl, who then grows up quickly. Turns out she's actually like an ancient spirit from the moon, who kind of escaped, and she's trying to live the life of a little girl and then becoming a teenager. And the gods gift the bamboo cutter and his wife with golden riches to basically contribute and try and give her the life that this spirit deserves, basically. Yeah. So she's got a limited amount of time on Earth to take in all the sights, sounds, all of life, basically. So it's a deeply sad film.
Sounds sad.
It's really sad. The ending was even getting a little bit of that old emotion out of me.
Did you cry?
No.
Oh.
Because men don't cry.
I've cried at films loads. All the time.
All the time.
Yeah. There's no bad about that.
Oh no, yeah. No, nothing wrong. I was getting a little bit misty-eyed towards the end.
Alright.
So the story itself essentially follows the Princess Kaguya as she grows up, and she kind of grows at a rapid pace, which is fun. As she kind of develops into a kind of like a teenager, young woman. And the second half of the film basically deals with her father's not a bamboo cutter anymore. With the gold the gods gave him, he's now he buys a mansion, and he attracts the interest of all the different suitors who want to try and get married to the princess, but she just tries to bat them all off, which makes for fun scenes. She's just not interested.
Tries to bat them all off.
Tries to bat them all off, yeah. It turns into a hentai halfway through.
Okay.
So she tries to find creative ways of just getting rid of them, basically.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of plot.
No.
There's the whole thing is very loose.
Yeah.
It's more a morality tale about living life to the full, and not falling into society's preset ideals.
Man.
Man. Because essentially the whole thing of the father using the money to kind of basically raise her to be like this fine, noble princess is ultimately wrong because he's not allowing her to live her life the way she wants to lead it, and he probably shouldn't follow preset societal rules.
Yeah.
Isao Takahata he's like the radical experimentalist at Studio Ghibli. If Miyazaki's more like Walt Disney, I'd call Isao Takahata more like Ralph Basky.
Yeah.
Kind of the more weirder experimental ones. The experiments don't always work.
Yeah.
But at least they're interesting, like his failed Lord of the Rings film. So Isao Takahata tackles loads of more difficult themes than Miyazaki does, I think. Obviously he did Grave of Fireflies, which is one of the most haunting films ever made. He did Only Yesterday, which is more suited to being like a live action drama than an anime. He did Pom Poko, which is like I don't know what Pom Poko is. And then the last we did before Princess Kaguya was My Neighbour the Yamadas, which I would almost call like Japanese Simpsons.
Yeah.
Which is, it's pretty good. I mean, Tale of Princess Kaguya is more like a return to a very more traditional Japanese style of storytelling, where the whole look of the film is almost like a scroll being unfolded. But so the plot itself is very loose. You know, the scenes themselves are all brilliantly constructed. There's really fun scenes where the father hires like this kind of coach, kind of like this sensei teacher who's trying to teach how to be a woman, how to be a proper fine woman, but she's just not interested. She'd rather do her own thing, and fella can go crazy. So the film is, I think, 3 very distinct acts. The first 40 minutes of the film is very pastoral. It's all set in the Japanese countryside, and it's absolutely phenomenal animation of her kind of growing up in the fields and all the rice patches, and learning life lessons as a child. And then it goes into the second third of the film where she moves away, and they're trying to train her to become like a lady, like a princess. And then in the final third of the film, she essentially realises her own mortality. She realises that, I've only got a limited time to be here. I've got to return to the moon, because spirits in Japan all live on the moon and gods live on the moon.
Okay.
They have an odd relationship with the moon.
Yeah.
And there's only a limited amount of time she's got left, and she essentially tries to make amends for what she's done, and she tries to live her life to the way she wants to live it. Which it's almost like a bittersweet message, really.
Yeah.
And she makes a lot of connections with people she thought she'd missed, and she does things that she didn't do before. So the animation is probably the best animation I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It's absolutely phenomenal. I've never seen an animated film quite as beautiful as this. Like, you can see every single sketch line, and they've used computer animation as well too, because it's all the colouring's done on computer animation now. They made it look like kind of watercolour paintings.
Oh, okay.
You can see every pencil line, and it feels like the time and attention has been done to every single frame of the film. More so than like The Nut Job or Shrek Forever After.
Yeah.
And you can actually feel like care and attention has been put into the film, and every single kind of subtle facial expression is perfectly expressed. So in terms of animation, it's just some of the best I've ever seen. And they said that the style is almost like an old Japanese scroll. You kind of keep on reading it and you keep going along, and a lot of the backgrounds are all abstract and kind of washed out. It's just mesmerising filmmaking. So like I was saying, if you don't know anything about Japanese culture,
yeah,
I think a lot of it, well, not all of it. I mean, you can still get into it, because I think it's ultimately quite a universal story. But
did you watch it dubbed or
subbed? Subbed. Leeds was playing, like they did for Wind Rises last year, 3 showings of a subtitled version.
Whoa.
I was quite impressed.
That is impressive.
What was quite cute actually was in the cinema I saw it was like a Japanese family.
Oh yeah.
Obviously living in England. I was thinking, it must be quite nice to go to a cinema in England and be showing a film in your own native language.
Yeah.
Must be quite nice, I think.
Yeah, it must be cool.
Yeah, not having to read the subtitles and stuff. It must be quite nice. I was surprised actually, because there was like some younger families there as well who I was surprised for a subtitled screening that would come.
Yeah.
But the dub version sounds weird. The dub version has like Chloe Grace Moretz as the Princess Kaguya.
Ugh.
Yeah. I just couldn't imagine this film being in English.
No.
It's as I've tried to get across. It's so the story is so culturally specific to Japan. It just sounds wrong having American come out of the.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like with some of the Studio Ghibli dubs, I think the dubs really suit them.
Yeah.
Particularly the ones that are maybe a bit less Japanese aesthetically. Something like Howl's Moving Castle is probably more influenced by like European art styles, and it's got a more European look to it. You know, it could be set in like a heightened version of medieval Germany, for example. So I think the English voices suit it.
Yeah.
While the Japanese version always comes across a little bit stilted to me. But in the Princess Kaguya, I just could not imagine it being done in like with American accents, because like I said, it is so culture specific to Japan. And then like at the end, there's a really weird scene when the spirits come to take Princess Kaguya back to the moon. It's Buddha's riding on a cloud.
Okay.
Because the religion in Japan is Shinto Buddhism. That's like the main religion. But I was thinking, oh yeah, again, that's quite culturally specific. Because if it was in like another film, maybe like God would appear or something and take her back. But in the context of Japan, it would have been, and in the story, it would have been Buddha that came back to take her back. So probably some of it would come across as kind of a bit odd. Even the whole concept is odd, that this bamboo cutter finds like this tiny baby being. But there's some really fun scenes at the beginning where like when the bamboo cutter first finds Princess Kaguya, like I said, she's almost like a mini version. And then when bamboo cutter hands it over to like his wife, she just like expands, turns into a baby.
Yeah.
And then it's really fun seeing like grow and develop. It's almost like Boyhood.
Yeah.
But like in animation.
Oh yeah. Is it a better film than Boyhood?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Miles better than Boyhood.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's hard to describe the plot of, because there isn't much of a plot. It's more about like the individual scenes and taking in the moments, and I absolutely loved it. It's a really bittersweet film, you know, in terms of its plot and what happens to the characters. It's hampered by amazing animation and an amazing score.
Is there a 10 out of 10 coming?
Just stick with me.
Oh no, I'm excited.
Joe Hisashi is the composer of the film, and he did all of Hayao Miyazaki's scores.
Yep.
Joe Hisashi, in my opinion, is the best living film composer.
Okay.
Better than John Williams, better than
Danny Elfman.
Oh, gosh. My favourite.
You know, you did the film soundtrack to 50 Shades of Grey.
Danny Elfman?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, oh, oh. You can imagine that, can't you? But the score's amazing. And at the end of the film, when it was finished, it was just, I was enraptured, and I loved it. But at the same time, I was thinking, God, they're not making any more films.
Yes.
Like, why have Studio Ghibli shut down? Like, it's really sad.
It is sad.
And it shows what a state the Japanese animation industry is in. Like, I was reading an interesting article about a American who works as like an animator in one of the big anime studios in Japan.
Yeah.
And apparently it's horrible.
Really?
You get paid nothing.
Yeah.
You work insane hours. I mean, the guy says, you know, on the one hand, I love what I'm doing. I'm completely satisfied artistically.
Yeah.
But I've got no time to live.
Yeah.
I live in a shit apartment. I'm probably not going to go anywhere with this. So it just sounds like a horrible industry where fucking Studio Ghibli, with the backing of Walt Disney, can't like maintain. So there's only one more Studio Ghibli film to come out.
Will you be seeing it?
Oh yeah, absolutely, no question.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not been directed by any of the big hitters. In fact, none of the big hitters are involved in the film at all. Miyazaki's retired. Isao Takahata has been making animated films longer than Miyazaki, so this will probably be his last film. In fact, originally, The Wind Rises, Miyazaki's final film, was going to be shown as a double bill with the Tale of Princess Kaguya.
Yeah.
But due to delays, Princess Kaguya had to come out like a few months later.
Yeah.
And this was going to be in reference to back in the mid-80s when Studio Ghibli did the weirdest double bill of all time.
Yeah.
They double billed Grave of the Fireflies with My Neighbor Totoro.
Oh no.
The weirdest double bill ever. Like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
And it was going to kind of be in reference to that. Tale of Princess Kaguya is also a 2.5 hour film.
Really?
Yeah. And it just flies by.
Yeah.
Absolutely flew by. So it's got gorgeous animation. It's got a really sweet morality story.
Any problems?
I think the problems are more that the characters are a bit flat. But I think that comes from... Well, they're not flat, but they're quite... There's not a lot of depth to kind of the tertiary characters, to the second and third tier characters. Princess Kaguya herself is a really interesting character. You know, she's got a lot of depth and a lot of personality, and characters have a really well-defined personality. There's just not much to it besides from that. But I think that more goes to the fact that the story is a folk tale, and the characters are more archetypes.
Oh, yeah.
So I can kind of forgive it for that, but at the same time, there's not much to the other characters besides from their personalities that they've got, which are fine. You know, they're fun to watch. The bamboo cutter's really fun. He's like a dotty old man who's suddenly come across his fame and fortune, and he doesn't quite know how to handle it.
Yeah.
The mum's kind and caring and offers sagely advice. There's kind of the boy back home, and you know, they all fall into kind of archetypes. But since this story is such an ancient story, I kind of don't mind. So I'm gonna give it.
Yeah.
A 9 out of 10.
A 9? Why?
A 9 out of 10.
Oh yeah. I thought we were on for our third 10 then, and the first one from you.
No, I would give it a 9 out of 10.
Yeah.
Borderline 10.
Yeah.
It's almost on the verge of being a 10. It just, the only thing with the film is I think it does go maybe a little bit too long.
Yeah.
I think it does sag a little bit in the middle.
Yeah.
But you kind of don't mind while you're watching it. The whole thing does fly by. But it does sag a little bit in the middle, and some of the other characters aren't quite as memorable as maybe some of the other Studio Ghibli characters. But that's the only comparison to stuff like Spirited Away and Howl's Moving Castle and Princess Mononoke. But I would give it a 9 out of 10.
Yeah.
If you're big into anime and animation, it's an absolute must. If you're big into Japan, you've got to watch it. If you're a casual audience member, it's something unlike you've ever seen before.
Yeah. And
it's just a bit of a trip just to see it. But no, a 9 out of 10. It's I would call it a modern day. You know what? Fuck it.
Yeah.
I'm going.
You're going for a 10.
I'm going for a 10. Fuck it.
Oh my god! Our third 10, the first one you've given.
Yeah, I'm going for a 10. It's one of the best films Studio Ghibli has made in a while.
Yeah.
While I adore The Wind Rises, it's got problems.
Yeah.
Multitude of problems.
Yeah.
It's better than Ponyo.
Yep.
Better than Ariete. In fact, it's probably the best overall Studio Ghibli film since Howl's Moving Castle.
Whoa.
Which is a film I absolutely adore. I think it's one of Miyazaki's many masterpieces. And that was about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I never expected Isao Takahata to make this kind of film. I thought it was...
Is it his best?
It's tied with Grave of the Fireflies.
Yeah.
You can make a convincing argument for both, but they're such different films, it's hard to compare. But that's one of the things I really like about Isao Takahata's Studio Ghibli films, is that they are all so different to each other. Miyazaki's, you can kind of look at the themes, you can look at the characters and the stylistic traits, and there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah.
Isao Takahata, there's none. He literally takes each film as a new chance to experiment with the form, experiment with the animation, experiment with the story.
Yeah.
I mean, like, apparently Miyazaki is filled with dread when Isao Takahata announces he wants to make a film.
Yeah.
Because he'll take half a resource away for, like, an undisclosed amount of time. So, like, you know, with Miyazaki's films, apparently the productions are really tight.
Yeah.
You know, it's very rare that they go over budget. Well, they do go over budget, but it's rare that they go over schedule, or, you know, they miss a release date or whatever. With Isao Takahata, it's like, I'll take half your animation staff. I don't know how long I'm going to be.
Yeah.
But apparently they spent 5 or 6 years storyboarding Princess Kaguya. I've only got like a third of the way through.
Yeah.
Apparently, this young producer spent about a year trying to convince Isao Takahata to actually make the film. I mean, after like 4 or 5 years, he'd already storyboarded like a third of it. So you can see why Miyazaki used to get quite a bit like, oh god,
Yeah.
he's making another film. So it's still showing in theatres. If you're a fan of film,
Yeah.
animation, good stories, something that doesn't involve Adam Sandler, or kind of we're talking about pop culture references in Community. Free of pop culture references. You know, sometimes it's just nice just to have a good story.
That's true.
Just a good story.
Yes.
It's a nice story. So highly recommended.
Yes.
My first 10.
I was good at advice though.